Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Business World Insights. Today's topic, Bahay Nihan, Rising Together Through Housing. In this session, presented in partnership with Habitat for Humanity, we'll be exploring inclusive business solutions in housing towards economic recovery. My name is Tiago Arnaiz. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Day 3 Innovations and Fort Health Data Systems, two health tech ventures based in the Philippines, and I'll be your moderator today. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, our nation's housing gap already amounted to over 6 million units, a majority of which coming from the socialized housing segment. This is expected to surge to 22 million by 2040, requiring 250,000 houses to be built per year just to keep up. Even more sobering is that 5.9 million low-income households stand unaccounted for, with no access to quality building materials, formal financing channels, and training and information on appropriate construction technologies. With the continuing threats of COVID-19 and severe weather events, the need for safe and decent housing has never been more urgent. This housing crisis cannot be solved by any one stakeholder. Partnerships need to be forged across the public and private sectors. In recent years, private companies have focused largely on mid-cost and high-end housing projects. In fact, in 2018, in the midst of a severe housing backlog in the socialized and unserved segments, we saw a surplus of over 500,000 units in the mid-cost and high-end segments. With the right guidance, our private sector leaders can lead the charge in closing the housing gap. And this has far-reaching benefits beyond the $61 billion opportunity around servicing the socialized and unserved housing segments. According to Secretary Eduardo Del Rosario of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, building one housing unit means boosting the production of no less than 80 industries across the country. Now, this is the focus of our Bahay Nihan Forum, creating viable solutions for our overlooked populations. Through our discussion today, our goal is to shine a light on the viable, inclusive, and mutually beneficial business opportunities around addressing our nation's housing crisis, co-creating a brighter future that's both better for our economy and, more importantly, for our future generations of Filipinos. So again, welcome everyone to today's session. Thank you for joining us. In addition to hearing from our expert speakers, we'd also like to hear from all of you. So do share your questions and comments, and for those joining through our webinar platform, participate in our live polls as well. Now, to start, we are honored to have with us today the Secretary of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development to set the stage for today's discussion. Secretary Eduardo Del Rosario served as chairman of the then Housing and Urban Development Coordinating Council from July 2017 to 2019, before the merging of HUDCC and the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board. Today, the 64-year-old retired Philippine Army Major General serves as the Secretary of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. Without further ado, let's welcome on screen Secretary Eduardo Del Rosario to give us this morning's keynote.
A pleasant day to everyone. The Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development welcomes this activity focusing on the country's housing sector in furtherance of our flagship Balay program for building adequate, livable, affordable, and inclusive Filipino communities. With your theme, Bahay Nihan, Rising Together Through Housing, this forum will definitely bolster awareness on the current state of the country's housing and urban development sector, and highlight our role not only in addressing the housing need, but equally important is the industry's economic pump priming potentials. This forum, jointly undertaken by Business World and Habitat for Humanity, is very timely as we had just approved our 20-year housing roadmap, even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. The National Housing and Urban Development Sector Plan will serve as our strategic platform to synergize and further propel the systematic and overall sectoral development landscape both in the urban and rural settings. It consolidates both the ongoing and proposed strategies, plans and programs of DSUD, our key shelter agencies, and other stakeholders, especially you, our private development partners, towards a common vision of sustainable housing and a well-planned community for all Filipinos. With regards to our current efforts, DSUD, along with our key shelter agencies, have financed and produced a total of 45,731 housing units during the first 3 months of 2021, despite the limitations due to COVID-19. This highlights our commitment to assist in realizing the dream of 81% of Filipino families to have a house of their own. In addressing our housing need, it will provide employment to the millions of housing workforce and also help boost our economy, as there are around 80 industries involved in the construction of a single housing unit. Hence, I would like to extend our gratitude to our partners from the business world and Habitat for Humanity for the noble undertaking. Rest assured that DSUD is one with you in attaining our common vision for resilient and sustainable Filipino communities. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Secretary Del Rosario. Now, to dive deeper into the private sector's role in addressing the nation's housing gap, let's kick off our panel discussion. Joining us today, we have 4 expert panelists that I'd like to invite one by one to share their initial thoughts on today's topic. First, we have Mr. Cary Everett. Mr. Everett is a member of the advisory board of Habitat for Humanity's Terwilliger Center for Innovation and Shelter. Prior to this, he led Hilti's North America operations as President and Chief Executive Officer, overseeing the businesses in the United States, Canada, the Caribbean, and Guam. He also served as President of Hilti Latin America, the Vice President of Sales for Canada, and as President and Representative Director of Hilti Japan. His passion for community involvement has followed him to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex in Texas. Under Cary's leadership, Hilti North America contributed its talents, tools, and funds to complete nearly 24 Habitat for Humanity homes across the United States and Canada, ultimately leading to his role on Habitat for Humanity's International Board of Directors. Cary, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for all being with us. My name's Cary Everett, and I had a wonderful business career for 37 years with the Hilti Corporation and got to see construction all over the world. Worked with architects and engineers and construction companies to hopefully build quality structures. But about 20 years ago, I got involved with Habitat for Humanity, a wonderful organization dedicated to do something very, very simple, get everybody a decent place to live. And you know, it's a staggering problem that we have in the world today. 1.6 billion people out of 6 billion people still need a decent place to live. And Habitat is committed to doing that. And so I have served on the International Board of Directors for Habitat and now serve on the Terwilliger Center. And during our development as an organization, we realized that we simply weren't moving quick enough. The organization was still very, very successful in the United States, doing outstanding work building homes. But in a global context, we weren't moving fast enough to put a dent in the organization, a dent in the problem of this 1.6 billion. So we expanded globally, of which the Philippines is a very important component of Habitat for Humanity worldwide. And organizations like the Terwilliger Center came out of that. Ron Terwilliger, one of the philanthropic people in Habitat Worldwide, helped start this organization, which is dedicated to innovation of all sorts, because we realize that Habitat can't solve this problem by ourselves. We need partners, and we need partners all over the world in all different ways. We need them in the building material industry. We need them in the financial area. We need young entrepreneurs who want to get involved. We need homeowners and that sort of thing. So I'm very excited to be with you, because the Philippines is where I've been able to visit multiple times and seen some wonderful work going on trying to solve this problem for housing. And I'm very excited to be with you to talk about how we move forward in what only can be said is a very difficult time during the pandemic. I hope that you're all healthy, and I'm glad that you've joined us today, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Kerry. We'll definitely be diving a little deeper into exactly what types of partnerships will be needed to solve this housing problem during our Q&A. Next, we have Mr. Horia Adrian, the President and CEO of Holcim Philippines. Prior to his appointment to lead Holcim Philippines in March 2021, Mr. Adrian was the CEO of Holcim Romania and market head for emerging Europe for the Lafarge Holcim Group. He joined Lafarge Holcim in 2000 and has successfully held various leadership roles, including CEO roles for Russia, Eastern Europe, and CIS and Middle East. He also managed the Lafarge Holcim Group's business transformation. Mr. Adrian, thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for having me with you today. As you have said, I'm with the group for more than 20 years now, and for Lafarge Holcim, affordable housing means helping populations with low revenue access housing at the most affordable cost. And affordable housing is a business activity with a high social impact, and we are aware of the important role that we play as one of the leading building material producers worldwide, but also the leading building material producer in the Philippines. And we do offer a range of innovative solutions for this topic, for construction, renovation, extension of affordable houses, tailored for the local challenges. And I agree with the fact that there must be a collaboration between different players in the supply chain of delivering such affordable housing solutions, including building material providers like ourselves, or microfinancing partners, or designers, architects, general contractors. So we are ready to contribute here, and from the perspective of Holcim Philippines, I say that we will continue the work that we are already doing since 2014, also in collaboration with Habitat for Humanity. Holcim helped building up to now something like 865 houses in the Philippines. So Philippines is a growing market. It's a young population, and definitely there is a big need of housing, as we have been introduced, and we are looking forward to work together with all the stakeholders to contribute to closing this gap in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adrian. Would love to hear more about the insights you might have gleaned from those 800 plus housing projects in the past few years. Now, also joining us is Mr. Noel Toti Carino. From 2018 to 2020, Toti Carino served as the national president of the Chamber of Real Estate and Builders Association, or CREBA. Prior to that, he served 2 consecutive terms as CREBA's executive vice president from 2012 to 2013, during which he chaired the organizing committees of the 21st CREBA National Convention, held in Puerto Princesa City, Palawan, and the 40th anniversary celebration of the association, held in Makati. Mr. Carino also previously served as CREBA's director and has been an active member of the association for more than 2 decades. Mr. Carino, welcome.
Thank you very much, Tiago. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting us. And I would like to introduce CREBA as to what it really is. CREBA is really multidiscipline aggregation of real estate development practitioners in the country. So it is not only composed of one set of practitioners, but is multidimensional, which includes land developers, building contractors, architects, engineers, real estate brokers, property land investors, and all the other stake and all the other allied industries that may have something to do with the industry. CREBA has been the chamber that has represented private sector participation, most especially in advocacies leading to housing development and real estate development in large. It has been in existence for the last 42 years, and it has survived many administrations, including time when the industry was not even properly represented. We take pride in saying that one of the advocacies that we have seen reach in fruition was our advocacy of pushing for the creation of the Department of Housing and Urban Settlements, which was enacted and which was organized 2 years ago. We worked hard and we were involved in the passage, in the creation of this department. Today, we are still at the forefront in many legislative efforts to ensure that the housing gap is really addressed properly. We have a motto or we have a slogan that has continuously inspired us, and that is a home for every Filipino. Each and every CREBA member believes that while that deficiency exists, it is a blight, and we must address this, and we must find radical solutions to ensure that that gap is lessened and removed finally. I have also been a real estate development practitioner for the last 45 years. I have, I am semi-retired in the real estate development, but I am now focusing mostly on advocacy work in real estate with CREBA. I look forward to a very healthy discussion on measures that we can promote so that we can address these housing problems. Thank you very much.
Mr. Carino, thank you very much. Sounds like that multidimensional approach that CREBA takes to housing will be vital to closing this housing gap. So we're very grateful to have you sharing your insights today. Rounding off our panel, we have Mr. Joe Soberano, Chairman and CEO of Cebu Landmasters Incorporated. Prior to establishing Cebu Landmasters in 2003, Mr. Soberano spent 23 years with the Ayala Group of companies, including various stints across Ayala Investment, Bank of the Philippine Islands, and Ayala Land. He was part of the pioneering group that established Cebu Holdings, Ayala Land's subsidiary in Cebu, where he led various vertical and horizontal developments and played an integral part in the development of both the Cebu Business Park and Cebu IT Park, urban redevelopments that have proven vital to Cebu's economic present and future.
Good morning to our viewers and listeners. It's a real honor for me to be part of this forum about housing as sponsored by Habitat and also by Business World. And I'm also very happy to share this stage with our more distinguished panelists here. I make special mention of my friend Toti Carino. It's nice to see you. Yes, I'm look forward to sharing my views on this forum from my experience as a developer, as a chairman and a chief executive officer of Cebu Landmasters. I've started that particular company in 2004 with just small dream of helping a little, provide a roof on top of the head of people that I saw would want it. I never knew that would start my career in development. I was just trying to have a short stint and doing it on a trial basis, but here I am. No, it has grown to a certain extent, and I have an organization that I'm very proud of, and a family that is also gearing up for future generations. I look at this housing initiative of our company not just as a business, but more so as a duty. I just feel that it has become more of our responsibility to reach out and provide these shelter requirements and these accommodation needs of our people who are in need of this. I truly believe that if we need to eradicate poverty in this country, we need to solve these housing issues, that confronts us. So I am glad that on my own small way, I've already built or continue to build over 30,000 housing units, both in the horizontal and the vertical side. We remain focused to that particular goal of really developing some more and providing that shelter need to maybe not to close in the gap, but more of a shared responsibility that we in Cebu Land Masters can contribute to. This is part of nation building, and I'm also very happy that I'm not just have not interacted with our LGUs from different cities and towns or provinces in BISMIN, but as well as the different shelter agencies, like Pag-ibig as a funder, or SHAFC, or GSHUD. I've learned a lot from them. Also with our shelter agencies like the National Home Mortgage and the like. And on the private sector side, in terms of being part of a national effort to help out as well. I've been past president of GREBA in the Cebu chapter, and I've also learned a lot from there. So, and maybe as a final word in my introduction, I also have been very fortunate enough to work with Habitat. So I am not only during my Ayala days, that when I was introduced to it, I helped pile up some of the hollow blocks, to build the foundations, but at the same time, helping in the effort. We have some projects together in Pinamalayan, Mindoro. I've also helped out to a certain extent due to typhoon roofing, the devastation that has wreaked havoc in many provinces in Visayas. I particularly am happy to be able to help in the Bohol rehabilitation programs in Bugod and Bantayan, and even in Tacloban. So this is a pursuit that I very much welcome, and I'm just very happy for this invitation. Thank you very much.
Mr. Soberano, thank you very much. It's inspiring to hear you framing your work not only as a business, but as a meaningful and impactful advocacy. We'd love to explore that a bit further in our Q&A, which we'll be jumping into right now. So if I can invite all our speakers back, we have a number of questions coming in from our audience. Welcome back, everyone. I'll be directing most of these to the panel at large, so please feel free to chime in with any insights that you'd like to share. Let's start, though, by concretizing the opportunity that we've spent this morning discussing so far. So we went over valuable insights on the market opportunity and the investment potential of the unserved and socialized housing segments. As we discussed, this represents a market value of about $61 billion collectively. As business leaders, how can you best capture that $61 billion opportunity around unserved and socialized, both to support economic recovery in the short term and, of course, close the housing gap in the long term? Perhaps I can throw this first to Mr. Kerry Everett.
Thank you very much. As I said before, I think you've got to start and think about a holistic approach to solving the housing problem. If it was so easy to solve, it would have already been done. And I really appreciate the words from Jose talking about duty and commitment to try to solve this for the citizens and people of the Philippines. I think you got to start with the money, though, first. And over the last 7 to 8 years, Habitat for Humanity has run a global microfinancing program that is financing about $120 million globally. And what's interesting about that is when we went into it, really, we couldn't find any banks or financial institutions interested because they didn't think they could make any money. And then secondarily, there was a concern about default and paying back. Well, the news after 7 to 8 years of doing this is, one, the payback by the people who take these small incremental loans to build additions onto their homes, whether it's a new floor, concrete floor, a new roof, the payback is extremely high. They're very dependable in paying back that, and the financial institutions have learned, albeit a smaller return on investment, there's return on investment. So I think we just need to get more financial institutions to understand that there's a business opportunity in providing funds to these people that are very, very good about paying back their loans that they're given. They're very, very, very responsible, and I think that's an amazing reality. I think the second thing in the Philippines is also we've got to work on disaster resistance. The problem of typhoons and the weather in the Philippines is really, really dramatic. And I've seen bamboo structures that are typhoon resistant by Base Bae and Habitat in the Philippines. And I think we've got to work on that. I think we've got to provide technical assistance because still most of the building is done incrementally at home, so we need to provide assistance, and Habitat is willing to help do that. And then I think we need to talk about land. I think there's two different discussions about housing in the Philippines. One being the rural situation where land is available, and then there's the problem of the cities where land is no longer available for people to buy and do. So I think if you put together a holistic approach of financing, quality construction and materials with technical assistance for the people and land management, and hopefully, as we heard, the involvement of the government to get involved in housing across the board, I think that we can innovate together to build more homes and go faster than we've been going, even though we've had this setback in the pandemic. Thank you.
Maybe just to build up on what you said and to answer to this question, one thing that the private companies can help in implementing the affordable housing initiative is simply, first of all, to create a focus on this topic. Okay, at LafargeHolcim we have an affordable housing solutions that we have developed over the last years, and we have implemented these solutions in 25 countries worldwide. We do have an affordable housing hub, which is also available on LinkedIn if you would like to have more information about. But basically, the offer around affordable housing that we are looking at, it's built around 4 core elements. The first one is about the microfinancing solutions. It's really an important topic for making people that have low income or no income being able to access some fairly, let's say, priced loans that are adapted to the housing needs and provided through microfinance bank partners. The second aspect is the technical support. And we did offer this technical support in our previous experience in the Philippines, building these houses that I was referred first time. I think we have trained the masons that were doing their own houses. So finally, it's not only giving a person a house, but teaching him how to build the house, or her how to build the house. It's even more important, creating a sustainable living after that. So we have dedicated teams supporting individual home builders and contractors to optimize the cost and increase the quality of their construction projects. The third pillar that we are building our solution for affordable housing is about new building solutions. So there are different building solutions in different parts of the world, ranging from Durabrick, which is an earth-based cement that we use in Africa, but also to the most innovative solutions. Last year, we started to build in Malawi for the first time 3D printed affordable houses that you build the walls in like 12 hours, 18 hours for a school. So it's really ranging from basic solutions to more innovative solutions. And the fourth pillar that we built our offering is around the distribution solution, with the objective of making those products and services available close to where the low to middle income people live. And we have something like that in India, developed for the rural area. So as I said, having a business focus is the first step, and then developing a proper solution. And I think we are well equipped to tackle this. As I said, in the Philippines, we have built on this second pillar on technical support for builders.
Any insights from either of our other panelists that you'd like to add in?
Yes, I'd like to chime in on that one. First, I'd like to backtrack a little bit. First, we all agree that we have a housing problem. But one thing that we must also agree is that where is this housing problem leading us to? Is it actually being resolved, or have we seen any improvements as far as solving this is concerned? I remember 6 years ago, our housing deficit was at just about 3 million. And every year, it continues to grow. So I guess the basic thing that we need to address is what's happening. What are the housing infrastructures in place? Are they really being relevant in addressing these housing deficiencies? There are three major areas, I think, where we should really be focusing. That's finance, land, and of course, governance. Even the matter of calling affordable housing, how affordable is affordable housing really? It has not made a dent. In the urban centers where the jobs are, we have seen an increase of informal settlers from 350,000 to now about 750,000. And yet our production of housing has not increased. It's still less than 200,000. And those are the things I think that we should really take a look at and see where legislation and where other interventions can come into place in order that private sector and the other stakeholders may join government in addressing these issues.
Well,
Soberano?
I guess it's my turn. Yeah, I'm looking at the Perweiler study, which I got to scan over. It's very striking about how this unserved sector has come about, and it has multiplied. No, and if I recall, up to this time, we're approaching something like 5.6 million in that backlog, because they are unserved. Probably they are the part of the informal, settler sector. They could not afford financing, and they're left out. And about 55% of this comes from these ODCs, which is actually a new term for me. coming from the owners, what you call this, driven construction. They're supposed to be those group that they have some tenure, they have some land, but I guess they're not able to go much farther than, or improving their house, their different houses, because of some income consideration, limited income. Now, I like to really see and address that particular segment, because when we talk about affordable housing, if you're now attended to, like from the private sector or the support from the financing, we're still falling a lot short. We need more developers there. We need more action. But this sector has contributed to the urban decay. And what it needs, for me personally, is an integrated effort. It cannot just be done on a piecemeal basis. Like an extreme example, okay, you have an ODC, an owner-driven construction household, living, say, in an urban center. We cannot just address that situation simply. We need to integrate that very well. I think the term was holistic, from Mr. Everett. He did mention that, which is really how we should look at this, and it has to be properly coordinated. It cannot be just left for one sector to address. That's why I would like to believe, if you want to address this very seriously, look at this sector. There's a lot of challenges there. I know that most of them probably in urban centers are where they are located, and we need to disperse them. And one of the things that could be explored very strongly is to really build up densities vertically, consolidate areas. If you're talking of a lot of ODCs, if you're assuming they can be consolidated in one area, that could be one serious project that we can attend to. And local governments, cities, provinces, towns do have the unique situations like this, and that should be addressed now. Where does the private sector like me come in? I've been involved in the Balay program. I am happy where that's being directed. I've done some efforts to do it. Now, if that can become more pronounced in a more organized fashion, that should be the step in the right direction.
Just a quick follow-up to that. Earlier, Mr. Carino touched lightly on market and regulatory requirements. So I'm hoping to expand on this a little bit. Perhaps we can start with Mr. Soberano. What major challenges do you see preventing businesses like yours from investing in the needs of low-income households?
Well, this thing about identifying an opportunity is where the developers are good at. But sometimes we get stymied with a good reason. I mean, government agencies are there to protect the interests of the market, of the buyers. But sometimes you get stymied by the bureaucracy, the process. If I'm not mistaken, to be able to get a permit to develop housing, you get above 20, 30 requirements or things like that. We're not adverse to people being protected, but we just want to make it more expedient. It's a time-bound type of process that we should be so to encourage developers to work on such projects some more. Now, the other thing that challenged us really in developing more housing is this requirement on socialized housing. Again, I welcome that because I work in all segments. But what I am a bit more worried about is the directive, to developers to do socialized housing projects as a matter of compliance. I mean, why should that be? We want to do housing in all segments, and from the socialized, economic, middle, upper mid, etc. Because that's how business will evolve. If there is an opportunity, they will be there. In fact, you can make good money in socialized housing. The only thing is they put a cap, and then of course you now try to compromise somewhere else, so that your cost will not go beyond the target. So I just believe that this thing has to be rationalized better. And then going back to my emphasis on really targeting the unserved market. That is a major unserved segment of the market that has not been given emphasis. I'd like to be part of that very strongly. I'm sure a lot of our developers will feel the same way, and continue to support that particular segment.
I'd like to further the comment of Mr. Soberano on that, because we're really in the forefront as far as these challenges are concerned. Well, what he is really saying is really these are issues that are found in the balanced housing requirement, and it's the UDHA law. And what he was stating was the requirement of doing socialized housing. Even that alone, we can see in the figures of the past, not so many developers are excited, private sector developers, in really doing the socialized housing. Then we begin to ask the question, why not? Is there not an opportunity there? Most developers under the current pricing ceiling and scheme think that this is an obligation of government that is being passed on to private developers, and it should not be. And if that were the case, if private sector would participate, then it should not be punitive in nature. It is like right now, the current law states that if you have a major development in economic and the high end, you have to be punished, and so that you need to comply with the socialized housing. You have to produce X number of units or invest in that sector. That's fine. Most of the developers are willing to do that, provided, of course, that the figures are realistic. Today, I heard again the uh, the word livable, affordable, and decent housing. Current levels in socialized housing, especially in the urban areas, which states at 580,000 and 700,000, is no longer available. That's why in urban centers, there seems to be no end to the problem of informal settlers. Though we want to help them, we cannot help them because land is expensive, and it's just simply not feasible to do a project for them in urban centers. And I agree with Joe in saying that we should not have a piecemeal approach on this. Maybe the idea is to come up with settlements close to urban centers that are somehow related to transport. And this can be transport-oriented developments where this sector of housing can be located, and then they can just come in rather than just a piecemeal solution. The other challenges that we have mostly as developers is that most of the permits are still with the local government units. Development permits need to be secured even from the barangay level all the way up to the Sangguniang level. Then you have the local government unit mayor or head before it is actually acted on with the other national agencies. And just on this alone, we experience a lot of backlog. And backlog and time deficiencies really are very costly. To get one project going, there is a current study that was done in 2017 by HUDSI, which counted 100 documents and 68 permits from at least 20 government offices, requiring no less than 200 signatures to start and run a housing development through the requirements of permits and licenses that must be obtained from national agencies and LGUs combined. And some of these agencies are not even computerized. So they still have manual transaction with and you experience delays just on complying with the requirements with these agencies, especially right now, wherein there is the pandemic, and some of them are just on 3-day work weeks. So it just simply gets delayed. It is not unheard of to say that sometimes it may take 3 years from start of project conceptualization to actual development. In CREBA, we are pushing for the immediate transfer of the power to issue development permits and other requirements for residential subdivisions and vertical developments from local government units back to the departments through what has been set by law, which is the Housing One-Stop, the HAPSIS. And this will be, as the law provides, the DSUD is supposed to organize this per region where the ease of getting permits and licenses can actually be addressed. Rather than leaving the stakeholders to the mercy of the
We'll definitely circle back to bureaucracy and the need to procure 200 or more signatures for a permit later. But on the point of partnerships, I'd like to throw this audience question to Mr. Everett and Mr. Adrian to hear from you guys again. This question comes from Adrian Conoza, who I hope doesn't mind me paraphrasing a little bit. As we've highlighted already, the nation's housing gap is quite a complex issue. What specific partnerships should we be looking to strike across sectors to properly address this? And what are the basic roles of each of these partners?
I mean, just to build up on what the previous speaker have said, I think the authorities are definitely key stakeholders here, and maybe for the affordable housing projects, there must be a kind of a fast track solution on this kind of permitting in order to push and to speed up the development of such projects, because I can also share the experience of the previous speakers about the amount of time that needs to be spent into the obtaining a permit. So that's one thing. Second thing, it's also related to construction industry, which tends to be a bit more conservative when it comes to specifying the products to be used and the construction methods to be used and the way it is being designed a building. So there are new construction methods, more innovative, that bring new construction solutions that can make, at the end of the day, the construction faster and more affordable. And all this innovative solution of construction must be easily embraced by the specifiers and architects. So while the authorities should be providing a fast track for permitting, looking at the specifiers and designers and architects of this kind of affordable housing, there must be an open mind to embrace new construction solutions methods. Then we discuss about affordable financing also for this, and last but not least is the land issue. And with the land issue, I think the proposal that I heard before about coupling this affordable housing with the right transportation solutions, it's not a bad one. I think it's really a solution that can be looked into.
I have tremendous emphasis on what was said about large developments in the Philippines and the time it takes from start to getting the buildings built. And I think that's well covered already by my partners on the panel. I think the other issue, which was also talked about, is all the incremental building that's going on. You have somebody who has a piece of land, has some sort of structure, and continues to want to build. And so, how do you make it easier for them? And we talked about it. We've talked about the financing that's necessary for the $200-300 that they need to put on a new roof or something to that effect. It's the materials and the innovation and the training that needs to be effective. And I'd like to see greater partnership there throughout the country because a lot of housing and a large part of the numbers we've heard about is based upon incremental construction. I think Holcim does a great job, by the way, in the building supply of materials. And they need to get their products out in a simple way at an affordable price for people to do this incremental housing. And I just go back to the video we watched at the beginning of this seminar. The typical homeowner doesn't know how to do that. And we need to provide the assistance to them to do that. And Habitat wants to help do that with partners throughout the country.
And just to build on what you just said now, we have a digital platform called Pinoy Builders, where people that are interested in building their own house, they can get a lot of information about how to get this process started, what do they need for, and how they can implement the construction project. And I encourage people to also use this platform.
Well, if I may jump in, this Balay program, which was mentioned earlier by Secretary De Rosario, is a perfect partnership. It's a collaboration, not just of the local government, and the developer, but also of an NGO. So if you're talking of a partnership, let's just say that's the project on an ODC, targeting the unserved sector. The government has land, okay, and then here comes the private sector providing the funds, the developers. It could be even a consortium of developers, depending on how large the project will be. And here comes an NGO. Habitat will be very perfect for it, who will do the community organizing, identification of who the beneficiaries will be, together with the LGU, and at the same time, even manage the construction per se. Now, the developer partner isn't just there for the funds. And I really wish it's not just because they're doing it out of compliance. Again, compliance to the socialized housing requirement. It should be more of what it could extend in terms of health, and lending its expertise in development, concept planning, how to come up with the best fit, how to provide all these conveniences. So these are the technical support that you can also lend. Now, and that has worked for some involved in some of them. And one thing that you could further this to provide the more interest on the part of the developers is this is probably where you can incentivize them, because they're parting away with money. They're not gonna get for any return out of it, because that's going to be for the beneficiaries. That's where we can probably explore some fiscal incentives, tax benefits, and that's probably where that could be a better direction, rather than require developers compliance on socialized housing. That to them would energize or make things more welcoming to provide support on projects like the Balay program. And that's the collaboration that would I hope that will be pursued aggressively and holistically, and this should be handled by a national agency, to continue monitoring and rolling out and implementing it to the best. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, so on the topic of servicing low-income households, let's pull from some historical examples maybe. Can you share some success stories around housing projects and innovations benefiting low-income households? Do you have any insights you've gleaned maybe that might benefit other companies looking to launch similar solutions?
Well, I guess the developer on this panel, I'm sure my friend Toti is, who can share some of his thoughts. No, well, what's important really is to come up with projects that are not just affordable but sustainable. Definitely, no, and you prepare for it for the long term. It should be managed very well in the long term. So I mentioned about my emphasis as a developer on housing. I go across the board, and two of my major products is this Casamira model, catering to the economic and mid-market, and also not to forget the Villa Casita products that I have on socialized housing per se. I make sure that I'm not just providing home, but going farther and giving more amenities. If I can do it in a higher end type of amenity and beyond or more than the expectation of these buyers, I will do it. No, and that to me is a way of really telling them that we want you in this community that we're building, and provide those open spaces, especially at this time, post-pandemic. Provide that open space. These are the things that we would like to continue doing, and at the same time, to not letting go of your developments with your property management group, no, internally. You continue to make sure that the residents are happy, no, that they are, because they see how you are preserving the community. They will be the first one to make sure that they're paying their annual association of homeowners dues, no, paying their utilities. And again, on this thing about utilities, I would like to encourage that developers try to hold on them. No, that will answer also that call of accepting the responsibility to the project. Because if you are still there and making sure that the utilities like water are still provided, then you're really sticking your neck out for all of them. So I think
Right.
these are a few of those things that I'd like to share with the audience.
Right. Any insights from the rest of the panel?
I'd like to throw in two that I've actually seen in the Philippines. During the execution of microfinance, we worked with National Home Mortgage Finance Corp in the Philippines. I think some of them are on the phone today or on the video today, and just amazed with the staffing and organization that they had in place to execute these small loans, which is not difficult when people don't have bank accounts, credit cards, all these things. It seems everybody has a mobile phone, but just the execution and that they did in helping us do that, fantastic. Really setting the pace, in my opinion, to move forward. The other thing that I saw that I was really impressed with was bamboo housing. Tremendous amount of bamboo available in the Philippines and in certain countries around the world. Local material versus lumber, which we know is tremendously expensive right now. And the fact that these homes are typhoon resistant, up to 235 miles per hour, and cooler than the typical homes that are built. So was on some developments, very impressed, based by a Habitat, the Hilti Corporation was involved in that, but very, very impressed with those two solutions and the people involved to get those things done. Wonderful, wonderful housing, and of course the smiles on the face of the homeowners that I was able to meet.
On the point of innovation, Mr. Everett, we've already touched on this a bit earlier, but I'd like to direct this follow-up to Mr. Carino and Mr. Adrian. This question actually comes from Anne Claire Ramirez from our audience. Do we have the available skills and innovations in order to build affordable housing faster, more sustainable, and cost-efficient? Maybe we can look specifically now at the informal settler communities, as well as those families employing owner-driven construction that Mr. Soberano mentioned earlier. How can we ensure that future housing in the country will be available for these low-income households?
So I think there are innovative solutions around the world that are available for the affordable housing segment. I just mentioned one of them before. It's this 3D printing that is just started to be used in Africa for building houses. So yes, there are innovative solutions for construction. I would only encourage, as I said, the local architects, designers, specifiers to embrace these new construction solutions and to specify them for the affordable housing.
In CREBA, we have a holistic approach to that, knowing that we need to overhaul somehow the current laws that we have covering the housing industry. And so we supported the bill 4 years ago, and then this bill had amendments. It's called the CISPA Amendment Bill. This is a bill that addresses the issue of finance. I'd like again to point out that this was earlier noted that in high-end and mid-end homes, you had developers and you had people developing 500,000 homes were developed. But in the low-income group, less than 200,000 has been given out. It simply means it's not working. So in CREBA, we propose and we ask that the passage of this CISPA bill, this is a bill that was introduced by the previous speaker, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, and now Congresswoman Micaela Violago. And this bill calls for the creation of a comprehensive home financing program, which will address the finance requirements, especially of the low-income group. Right now, people are borrowing either from Pag-ibig or the banks. But the low-income group does not borrow from the banks. You need a centralized funding scheme that will be sustainable. In this bill, it will attempt to unify the currently, I would say, disaggregated government housing programs under a single housing finance mechanism called the Comprehensive Home Financing Program, which will initially be funded by SSS, JSIS, Pag-ibig, and also from the General Appropriations Bill. It is hoped that this bill, if passed, will be able to overhaul how we are able to access funding, especially for the low-income groups, where funding can be now attained at really low interest rates and longer terms, so that developers may also cash in on this, because now you have funding mechanisms that are in place and can be sustained. Through how to sustain this, in that bill, it states that a creation of a secondary mortgage program, so that the fund remains intact and will only be accessed by end users and not developers. Now, The other issue is on the issue of land. Of course, before we look into the production of houses, we have to look at the framework on the supply of land. Where is land available to address housing? Uh, there is another bill that has been pending in Congress. It is called the National Land Use Act. And in that National Land Use Act, it specifically targets where these developments can be used for residential and developed areas. I don't know in Cebu, but I understand that Cebu is highly urbanized and it continues. But here in Metro Manila, there are still pockets of land that are in the periphery that are still agricultural, where settlements can be encouraged. So that's one solution that we were looking at, was supporting the passage of the National Land Use Act. And finally, in terms of governance, again, we said earlier that I think most of the permitting and all of these requirements should be reverted back to the SUD and not left to the implementation of the local government units. This, I think, would help us address the national housing issues that are confronting us.
Well,
I just wanted to. Oh, please go ahead, Mr. Sobrano.
Let me just before I lose my train of thought there, if you don't mind. This thing about making things affordable to the market, no. I think it's there. The support of the developers like me are there. They wouldn't want to come up with products that's out of the market. No, it's only logical, or it needs a lot of marketing push, and trying to niche market where you are. So as far as I'm concerned, I go across all segments, including socialized, economic, mid, upper mid, or even the high end, of course. No, but you need to make sure that they are affordable. I think part of this is spotting out where the locations will be. Of course, you don't want to be in a location that will translate you to price yourselves out of the market. No, yeah, so that's also critical. This building technologies, that's also very important, because the way to really do mass housing is we really are able to do it fast. No, you're able to do 10 houses erected, in a span of a week, continuously, and that's how you are able to build it up. And there are lots of technologies, prefab, cast in place, and they have become very, very innovative, and we have to continue pursuing that. Now, what I would like to also again go back to is this unserved sector. How do you make it affordable for them? Of course, you have to consider a lot of subsidies now. Government support should be there. And if you want a private sector to come in very strongly, like from our end, definitely under the Revolite program, we're going to support that. But please open up to the consideration on tax incentives, on how it will also benefit the developers. No, the willingness is there. Please don't let us not be forced to doing this because we're trying to comply on certain regulations. No, we're doing this out of a good sense of purpose, and at the same time, we just like certain recoveries, because we would be making our money or profit, to be able to roll and continue delivering more houses out of the products that we have lined up. And it will cater to the market that we are addressing. Of course, when you're in the city area or the urban centers, you cannot create too much socialized housing, definitely, or even economic, because of land values. You need to go a bit farther, but you cannot also go too far if there are no industries there or transport becomes a challenge, the question of accessibility has to be put into the equation. So these are the things, making it affordable, and I'm glad all of this are supported very well by the liquidity that we have been supported by the banking sector, from Pag-ibig and different other providers, no, the shelter providers, no, the SHAFC, the National Home Mortgage, the Community Home Mortgage Program, because I mentioned Pag-ibig, and the banks. Maybe the thing lang is to even lengthen the remaining period. Pag-ibig goes as much as 30 years. The banks limits it to 25, even 20 if it becomes a condo. Why can't we be like the other developed countries that stretches it out over 40 years, making things more available? Anyway, the longer the term is, for so long as that is providing you that interest, it's an income to the financial institutions or the provider. So I hope that continues in terms of support, because that's the way to make it very affordable to the broadest, wide-ranging sector of this housing industry.
Right. So I understand Habitat for Humanity is working with TESDA and a technical vocational institution called Skills in order to introduce blended learning tech for masons and carpenters. I just wanted to throw in here, they've estimated that the ODC segment will require at least 1 million skilled workers. And I'd want to go back to Mr. Adrian for what I believe will be the last question for this Q&A. You spoke earlier about the resources you provide through Pinoy Builders, the Affordable Housing Hub, your experience 3D printing houses. This question from the audience comes from Dean Jorge Bocobo, and he asks, how can design and manufacturing engineers contribute to areas of technical innovation needed to produce high-quality, disaster-resistant housing in a timely and cost-effective way?
I think that's a very good question, and it leads me to a topic that is happening nowadays. There is a Lafarge-Holcim Foundation. Maybe some of you know, some of you don't, but we are offering incentives for young architects and designers for providing solutions for sustainable construction. One of these being affordable housing as well. And there is a 3-year cycle for this initiative, and nowadays we are going to offer the prizes for Asia Pacific region. It will happen on Friday. But what I'm saying is that every 3 years there is a possibility for young architects and designers to submit these proposals to the foundation, and there is an overall prize money of about $2 million per cycle that is being distributed to projects that provide sustainable construction, let's say, features. Coming back to the Philippines, if you are a designer or a construction engineer that has ideas around new ways of constructing and speeding up this construction of affordable housing, I think I agree with my predecessor saying that affordable housing should be a speedy job. Then you can just contact us and discuss with us to see how can we cooperate in implementing such an idea.
Of course, we'll still have time for each of our speakers to share their quick closing thoughts, but we are nearing the end of today's session. While we won't be able to address all the questions still coming in, our organizing team is making sure to note them all down so our speakers can reach out after today's event to share their insights. So please feel free to keep sending those questions and comments in. Now, before closing this session, I'd like to invite on screen Habitat for Humanity Philippines Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Lily Fuentes, to share a few words. Ms. Fuentes, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to all the panelists who actively contributed their ideas, thoughts, and business solutions to help address the pressing and continuing housing issue that has plagued low-income Filipino families for generations. It is only with concrete and lasting public-private people partnerships that we will be able to resolve the housing gap and provide opportunities for low-income families to have affordable, decent, and disaster-resilient homes. We have repeatedly heard the urgency to address the housing gap and fast-track housing production for low-income markets to prevent an irrevocable housing gap that will create detrimental social and economic consequences. We do not want to build a future society where housing is a luxury that only a few can own. Unfortunately, we know that the government on its own is not able to address the issue, but collectively, we have the opportunity now to change access to affordable housing for all. And it starts with creating a conducive business environment where market actors have the incentives to produce affordable housing units and provide quality and inexpensive building materials for millions of families who are building and improving houses on their own. Second would be working with the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development and key shelter agencies to streamline bureaucratic processes and address bottlenecks that hinder housing production, land acquisition, and funding for housing. Lastly, forge genuine people-public-private partnerships that adopt community-led housing initiatives responsive to the needs of low-income families and while ensuring resilient, inclusive, sustainable, and empowered community in the process. Habitat for Humanity Philippines lauds the private sector, the corporates through their shared value and corporate social responsibility, developers through their socialized housing requirement, and the microfinance institutions through the provision of housing loans. They are instrumental in helping Habitat for Humanity build over 150,000 homes, provided more than 200 community infrastructures, and helped improve the houses of over 500,000 families. This means 3.2 million individuals now have access to safe and decent homes. This is a true example of how partnerships, enabling government policies, and business incentives for housing can facilitate housing production and improvements. However, with a current housing gap of 6.5 million units, we know that tonight there are still 32.5 million Filipinos who will be sleeping in unsafe and insecure housing conditions, vulnerable to various hazards and dangers. Therefore, now more than ever, the private sector should invest more in affordable housing and expand its services to the housing sector because it fuels economic development, supports other industries, and most importantly, helps families to break free from poverty. With the urgent housing need and the millions of Filipinos that need our support, Habitat for Humanity Philippines will soldier on and continue its mission to build a country where everyone has a decent place to live until not a single family is decently and adequately housed. I call on the private sector to collaborate with Habitat for Humanity, other organizations, local government units, and key shelter agencies and respond, do something innovative, scalable, and sustainable that will help address homelessness and poverty housing conditions faced by millions of Filipinos. Together and in partnership, we can build homes, communities, and hope for every Filipino. So once again, thank you everyone for being part of our Bahay Niyan, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fuentes. I've been informed by our production team that we should take this opportunity for a quick group photo. So may I please invite all our panelists back on screen. Okay, so I'm gonna do a countdown. So everyone smile on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great. So to formally close our session, I'd like to invite each of our panelists to share their closing thoughts. Perhaps we can start with Mr. Everett. Kerry?
Well, first, Lily, great job on her words just then. And, you know, Habitat's committed. I'm committed. We all in Habitat suffer from this disease called habititis, where we believe everybody deserves a decent place to live. And the question becomes why? Because we believe a house is the glue that allows a family to develop. So much money is invested in education and health. But if you think about it for a second, until a family has a decent place to live, it's hard to educate their children. It's hard to make sure they're healthy. It's hard to grow the family and go forward. So affordable housing is a passion for Habitat because it's a decent place to live that ignites that family to move forward in their struggle to move forward. And it's the same in the Philippines and all the countries we work in. And as I said in the beginning, we need your help. if you're listening tonight and you might have an idea, a thought, reach out to our team in the Philippines. We're open for discussion. The Terwilliger Center, which I serve on, is committed to innovation and finding ways, the same in the past and new in the future, to move forward and to do these things and reach out. Let's work together to get this done. We're not going anywhere, I can tell you that. And as Lily said, we're committed to make sure everybody has a decent place to live. I want to thank the team for allowing me to participate, specifically Business World Insights and everybody of our sponsors that are here tonight, and especially to the Habitat team and the Terwilliger team in the Philippines, who do a great job. Just keep going, and thank you all, and thank you to our panelists tonight. Very interesting comments and very wonderful passion for solving this problem in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Everett. Mr. Adrian.
Yeah, so from my side, we at Holcim Philippines, we are committed of building a smarter, greener, and a better world for all. Therefore, affordable housing is really a key piece of our strategy, and we are a trustful and reliable partner in developing such solutions. So we are also willing to collaborate and speed up the development of these affordable housing solutions for the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carino?
Good afternoon. Again, many thanks for inviting CREBA. It was quite inspiring to hear Ms. Puentes offer a synopsis of today's talks. And in this regard, may we invite Habitat for Humanity to be an active member of CREBA, especially in pursuing advocacies. Mr. Everett mentioned innovation, and in CREBA, we do have a lot of advocacies, and we work with the various legislative forums where we could probably address issues that will help us pursue with more vigor how to close the housing gap. Moreover, I'd like also to state that the current figures that we are targeting, which is about 100 to 200,000 homes a year that we should be producing for the 32 million that has remained without a home, is a very dismal target. In CREBA, we are saying that our target should really be much more than that. It should be at least 500,000 homes to be produced, so that in 2 decades or in 20 years, we are able to eradicate or really produce 10 million homes over that period of time. The effort in addressing this housing gap has not really made a big dent, because there are many structural reform programs that we need to suggest to government, especially in finance, in land, and also in local governance. And I think if Habitat can help us here, it would really be a great effort, collaborative effort, so that private sector can be one with government in addressing these issues. Again, many thanks also to the other panelists, to Joe, to Chris, and all the other members of this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carino. Mr. Soberano, you have the last word today.
My thanks again to Habitat for Humanity, and of course supported by Business World, to the team of Habitat for Humanity. I'd like to state that I'm very excited of more engagements that we could work on together. We have done a couple of projects. I am looking forward for doing more with you, and what we have heard from this panel group are also very insightful, and we can definitely make it good use. It's an honor for me to be here, and maybe as a final shot, let me do a little advertising. Uh, if Secretary Ed Rosario is still tuning in, I will be expecting him here tomorrow in Cebu, because we're going to be signing this project under the Balay program. No, there will be 3 mid-rise buildings that will be put up in the Lorega area. 2 of which is going to be funded by the city of Cebu, and 1 of which is funded by me via an outright donation of 115 million pesos. But again, how I wish it was not just for compliance purposes. You could have made it more exciting in another way by providing certain fiscal incentives, probably. So that's what the Balay program has created, the collaborative effort, call it a PPP, and we should do more of this stuff. No, and it will actually cater or serve the unserved sector that we have always felt needs more attention. So I thankful once again, and congratulations to the people behind this particular forum.
So with all these ambitious, inspiring goals and partnerships forged, I think that's a fantastic place to end today's session. So thank you again, Secretary Eduardo Del Rosario, Mr. Cary Everett, Mr. Oria Adrian, Mr. Toti Carino, Mr. Jose Soberano, and of course, Ms. Lily Fuentes. Such a pleasure having you on today's session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and of course, thank you very much to the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, Chamber of Real Estate and Builders Associations, CREBA, the Management Association of the Philippines, Makati Business Club, the National Home Mortgage Finance Corporation, the Organization of Socialized and Economic Housing Developers of the Philippines, and the Subdivision and Housing Developers Association. A huge thank you to the Philippine Star, our media partner, to Habitat for Humanity and Business World for having me on yet another wonderful discussion here on the 3rd edition of Bahay Nihan, Rising Together Through Housing. And of course, to everyone watching, wherever in the world you're tuning in from, do help us out by participating in our post-event survey to help us make these events better and better. My name is Tiago Arnaiz. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in the next session of Business World Insights.
This is Ed and Gina, and their home in the Philippines has just been destroyed by a typhoon. How did this happen? Years ago, Ed and Gina tried to get a loan to build their house. As part of the working poor, they made too much money for government subsidies or development aid, but not enough to qualify for bank loans.
I guess we'll build with whatever money we have.
They saved up and asked Pablo, a local laborer, what they should build first.
I think concrete walls.
They didn't know he hadn't been formally trained in construction. At the store, Ed and Gina didn't know how to choose the best materials.
If we get the cheaper ones, we can get more.
Pablo helped them build their walls. This went on for years. Save a little, build a little. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and they were proud of it. Then the storm came, and families that built walls instead of starting with foundations lost much of their investment. Ed and Gina, like more than 1.6 billion people in the world, live in a market that tells them you don't get to have a good house. When banks and microfinance institutions won't give people like Ed and Gina loans, they're saying you don't get to have a good house. When material companies overlook the Eds and Ginas of the world as a profitable market segment, when training institutions don't provide local laborers with the right construction skills, they're saying you don't get to have a good house. But what if that could change? To address the unmet construction needs of low-income families, Habitat for Humanity's Terwilliger Center for Innovation and Shelter works behind the scenes with material suppliers, entrepreneurs, training organizations, financial institutions, and other ecosystem players. We help them to innovate, test, and improve products and services for Eds and Ginas. Like working to find an alternative to river sand for construction in India, developing an app linking masons to information in Mexico, working with accelerators in Kenya and elsewhere for housing startups, or creating a global investment fund for home improvements. We lower the business risk by offering technical support, research, and cost sharing. If an idea doesn't work, we gain new insights, and it's back to the drawing board. Ideas that test well are scaled up and sustained by profits for companies. And the number of Eds and Ginas who benefit aren't limited by the size of philanthropists' pocketbooks. By helping the local markets serve them better, the Terwilliger Center is leading a systems change that will tell the Eds and Ginas of the world, you get to have a good home too.